there's a lot of different, I guess, potential solutions to helping people make healthier food choices. We hear about sugar taxes, marketing regulations, particularly marketing certain foods or food groups to children, and of course these rating systems. And I'm in Sydney. We were speaking off air. Over here we have the Health
Right?
Star.
Isn't it Health?
Sorry.
It's Health Star, right? The Health Star rating.
Yeah, we have the Health Star rating system, which sort of ranks a food out of 5. And it's on a lot of foods. It's not on all because it's not a mandatory. It's a voluntary system. What can you tell us about the various sort of food rating systems used across the world and how well they're working?
Well, I think even before we talk about that, you highlighted that there's no single silver bullet to fix the food system. But we can do this. We can actually fix the food system. We created the food system we have now from farming all the way to food manufacturing very consciously with the goals of addressing vitamin deficiencies and calories over just 50 years. And so over the next, at most 50 years, but hopefully less, over 20 years, we could fix the food system, but it's not going to be one solution. And so we have done a lot of work to outline kind of the policy solutions, and we've worked on helping inform a national strategy in our country and trying to work with other nations as well. And it involves healthcare and food as medicine. It involves the power of regulation and food regulation. It involves schools and federal nutrition programs. It involves procurement. It involves science and advancing science, and it involves consumer communication and other things. And so first, there's no silver bullet and no paper. And we've done work on soda taxes. We've done work on junk food taxes. We've done work on calorie menu labeling and many other things. And so you have to really have a suite of solutions to take care of this. And so I just raised that because, as I'm sure we'll get into, some people have misinterpreted our work on Food Compass as though it's the answer to our food problems, where it's just one tool among many, many tools. So there are, and in the US, most people don't recognize this, but around the world, these food rating systems are very common. And so in Australia, there's the Health Star rating. In the United Kingdom, there's the Health Star rating. In much of Europe, there's Nutri-score. In Latin America, there's actually single nutrient reductionist systems, which are black box warning label systems. In Chile, in Mexico, in Brazil, in other countries, there's nutrient profiling systems. And what all of these have in common is they try to take some nutrient information about a food, put it together in a guide, and put it like on the label in a easier way for consumers to interpret what's healthier or not healthier. And they're not intended to replace dietary guidelines. Within the realm of dietary guidelines, if someone wants to buy a bread, they can look at the different breads and try to choose a healthier one. Or if they want to get a dessert, they can look in the desserts and get a healthier one. Or if they want to get a frozen dinner, they can look in the frozen dinners and get a healthier one. So they're very widely used. And we looked about 5 or 6 years ago at the landscape of these food rating systems, and we noticed some common limitations. One of the most common limitations was that these tended to just focus on a few nutrients. And so going back to that reductionist, it tended to be fat, sugar, calories, salt, and maybe a few other things, 7, 8, 9 things. And it's really hard to judge the healthfulness of a food based on 7 or 8 things. And so we thought that was a limitation. A second limitation of existing systems is that they tended to include some factors that we thought were outdated and shouldn't be focused on anymore. One of them particularly is total fat. Total fat's penalized in almost every system. Foods get a negative score for having too much fat, which I think is a terrible idea. You want foods to have more healthy fats. Another example is saturated fat. All of these systems have saturated fat by itself as a negative point system. And we have done lots of work showing that saturated fat by itself shouldn't be a top priority for health and when you're judging foods. A third limitation is calories. Almost all these systems give negative points for calories, which makes no sense at all, right? It's better to have 120 calories of a healthy food quality than 90 calories of an unhealthy food. Why should we give a negative score to a healthy food that has 120 calories? So that was a second, limitation we saw. A third limitation was these systems didn't incorporate one of the most important things you and I have talked about, which is refined starch, refined grains. So added sugar was given negative points in almost all these systems, but not refined grains. And so a refined breakfast cereal or cracker or bread that has no sugar would get terrific points. And so in the United Kingdom, for example, English muffins, which are called crumpets, get terrific scores because they're 100% starch, no added sugar, no fat, and they look like, but they're not, that's not a health food, right? It's glucose in a package. And so that's a third big limitation. And then lastly, Simon, another limitation we noticed was that beyond kind of nutrients, these systems often didn't look at other things, like processing wasn't incorporated. A fermentation, which can be beneficial, wasn't incorporated. These bioactives and phenolics and flavonols weren't incorporated. Trace nutrients like omega-3s weren't incorporated. And so we said, look, these systems are being used. Can we do research to see if we can create a better system that, is more holistic, incorporates refined grains and starches, incorporates things like processing and fermentation, doesn't penalize foods for having fat or calories, and compare it to existing systems. And again, I'll step back and say I don't want to be too critical of existing systems. I think Health Star Rating and Nutri-score are pretty good. They're pretty good systems. They're not terrible. But we just wanted to see if we could build a better system.